Welcome to Take Me to the Cloud, a place for business professionals to hear insights and best practices from industry experts that combine cloud systems, operations, supply chain, and finance.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. We're here joined today by Brad and David from Slatwall, as well as Wally from Witham. And today we're going to discuss the challenges of an e-commerce project in terms of implementing it. So I'll hand it off to Brad. He's going to discuss the internal resourcing involved and just knowing where to start with the project.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Yeah, I think one of the first stress points, or challenges really kicking off the process of building out that e-commerce, new storefront, new implementation, project, whatever you want to call it, kind of comes really early. And that's, for someone who's not, focused on e-commerce every day, it's figuring out what that team is going to look like. Who's going to be answering the questions when, whether it's a development agency or a platform partner or someone comes in and says, all right, let's sit down, let's start talking about what it is that you want to build. What do you want? What are we trying to solve? What are we trying to fix if you have a storefront live already? Who is that person who's going to own that? And in a lot of cases, that person isn't there. Or there's 2 or 3 people that are all kind of pointing at each other, trying to figure out what it takes to figure out. A lot of times what we've seen is a project, a storefront project starts off and someone, ends up filling that role down the line, as things kind of stall and drag out, whether it's, trying to get questions answered. Maybe it's someone on the ERP side. You've got this really cool, flexible, headless commerce platform. But then you also need someone on the ERP side. So when someone says, hey, where does this data live? How can I get to it? How should this interact? There needs to be someone who can say, oh yeah, I know the answer to that, or I can find someone. That's always a big challenge. And then from the functionality standpoint, especially if it's something new, there's always a sort of a rush to go out and find a competitor, right? Who's already been there, who's already doing something, and say, here's all this stuff that they're doing. I want exactly that. So it's easy to feel really overwhelmed. And, I know we've had, previous conversations, we've sort of talked about starting small, and that's really, where that is. What's the minimum amount of functionality? And I know, Kim, you've got some experience on the data side, but, what's the minimal amount of data that we really need to kick off a successful project, a successful implementation?
Right. So when we think of data, we think, it's just this segment of the project, but it really touches every single aspect. Mm-hmm. And you really need to include data from the beginning. Oftentimes, there's a linear path that people think, okay, now is the time to address data. You pull it in from the beginning. So when we think of data, you really need to analyze what upfront do we have to work with? Is data quality good? Oftentimes, the data quality stewardship that the company took on actually reflects what resourcing we need to incorporate into the project. Do we need to put more horsepower on the client side? Or do we need to provide more of our own resources depending upon that level? So it helps us take that initial gauge of the project and really set us up for success later on. And the other pieces really involved the typical extraction, transformation, and loading of the data. But when you really dig deep into it, each process is really filled with the need for business decisions. Constantly throughout the process, we're touching base with business owners, and it's not as simple as saying yes or no. There's constant debate, and it's knowing what to filter out for relevancy. And like you mentioned, Brad, what do we need to get into the system today to be able to operate? So it's basically that core minimum functionality. And then afterwards, let's add in all those little bells and whistles that were under debate. Otherwise, you're going to be going this cycle. So it's about priority, I think, with data, mm-hmm. and knowing when the cutoffs are and not trying to boil the ocean. Yeah. And I think this really links to the costing of the project too. And I think Dave can kind of marry up those two, because with data, that's really where the hole can be burned with cost if you don't keep that in scope.
Yeah. Go ahead, Wally. I was thinking maybe I'll just touch on scope and piggyback on the data side, Kim, just for a second. So, on the data side, what's interesting to me is if we are not thinking of the project itself and anything, and we're looking at where those data sources are, it's amazing to me as we go in and talk to our customers how little they actually know about their data. This is not everybody. I don't need to blanket everybody, but a lot of our customers really struggle with where their data is and the state of their data. They've been functioning and they're moving along, and yet when we move to a new system, or in this case, add on something to that, and we now expose the data in a different way, we start to really uncover some of the challenges of data. And I think, Kim, you hit the nail on the head. The rigor and attention we need to put to data is second to none. We really have to pay attention there. From a project scope and storefront. So even if you were putting together 6 sites and a bigger project, or you were doing a smaller project, as you piece that together and figure out what do you want to invest in your future, what do you want to invest in this curbside tech, what do you want to invest in sort of your new business model as we relate it back to the new current state and the new way we're all building out business models. How are you going to figure out that project? I think Brad did a nice job of sort of setting up what we need to do and think about. And then when we think of that overall project, David, as we start to look at, the scope of it and the cost of it and the storefront, what are some of the things that you've done with your customers or doing today with your customers? What are some of the ways that for the folks listening to this call, they're not thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to spend all this money, right? What were some of the ways that you are looking at ways to optimize the investment?
Yeah, I think the important thing is to start small. You don't have to, like somebody said earlier, boil the ocean here, right? If you sit down, and I think the other important point to all of this, particularly if you're thinking about this from a business owner standpoint, this is not a technology project, right? This is a business. This is a business project. It needs to be driven by business decisions, right? From financial operations, marketing, right? It's start there. Don't let technology drive this bus, right? We find very often that clients will say, well, I've given that to the IT department. They're running the show. Important part of it. But a lot of this is going to come down to what's going to drive the business, right? So sales, marketing, operations, finance, all of those things. And find out what those small wins are going to be, right? What are those fast wins that we can get on the table, we can get out the door quickly, not spend a ton of money, and see a huge potential return on. That's where to start. Be agile with that process, launch quickly, get those wins. You don't have to spend huge money in order to see some real benefits, but understanding what are those business strategies, or what are those business wins that are really going to help the business. I know we've come back to it a few times. This is an example, with one of our clients who really saw a huge issue internally with time and resources being spent on just taking order payments and chasing order payments. Getting those online, simple, quick, easy win, saved a huge amount of time and resources for them internally. Those kinds of things, focus on those small, quick wins. And you can over time build on those through that kind of agile process. And you can really, really affect the business and open up that digital channel to your customers, over time.
Love that, Dave. I really love the way you position that, because I don't think that ongoing investment that's required. What I just heard out of your narrative there is, we don't have to have this big, massive project. We can start small and have this ongoing investment. In the end, you may spend whatever your investment strategy is on this overall product, and whatever it is you decide that makes business sense for you. But you can start small, have a continuous, ongoing, forecasted budget, so to speak, and keep going and investing into this and growing it as you get there. You build out the sophistication of your team as you do it in this way, which I really liked listening to, the way you can get quick wins. And those quick wins lead to success. And when you have success, a little bit of success internally with those projects, they lead to other projects. And then you start to dip your toe, not just in the water, but you actually take a full dive in the pool. So
exactly.
Love it. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today on this lovely Friday afternoon.
You've been listening to Take Me to the Cloud, Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to be alerted of new episodes. For more information, visit withum.com.